I just woke up and had a vision that it was necessary for me to do a video on the special dietary program that I had worked on to keep my mother dancing until she was 97 and a half. And this was a woman who would have been in a wheelchair and with dementia and crippling paralysis, because she had a disease called Paget disease that would make her bones so soft that she wouldn't be able to walk. And she was really, my mother was my child and my bad patient, because she had been poisoned during the war in a smelter. She worked in the smelter, and sulfuric acid poisoning. And then from there she worked on her feet in sales. My mother never stopped working, and she was eating a lot of junk food and restaurant food, and they all have additives. Because she had come from a farm background, in other words, her lifestyle growing up until the age of 20, you would have to say, although she worked hard on the farm, it was organic, because in those days you didn't call it organic. It's just the way, they never used any pesticides. My grandparents were extremely successful farmers, and that was normal, actually, back in those days. I'm talking 100 years ago. And I had a vision that although she's gone now, she died at 98 as a direct result of clindamycin, and a toxic antibiotic that caused 3 heart attacks back to back, permanent bowel damage. It causes both fatal colitis and severe heart damage, from which you cannot reverse. There is a doctor here in town who also nearly died on it. It should be banned. But anyway, I got this vision that I have to do this. And I know that probably this won't be seen for 200 years. That's why I'm doing it on YouTube, because the only people I can trust to make sure that it'll still be around 200 years from now is Google. And I'm going to call it Special for Seniors to Keep You Dancing Till You're 110. And despite having osteoporosis and Paget disease and kidney damage and brain seizures, all of the above, I was able to give my mother an additional 11 years of dancing 5 times a week. Now that's also the very first thing, is that seniors, I don't know what's going to happen, because right now I notice the baby boomers, they're not dancing. They ski, that seems to be popular, both cross country and downhill skiing. I'm in northern Ontario, and we used to have dancing 5-6 times a week steady, and that's pretty much dying out. There's a few of us trying to keep it going, but it is dying out. But the dancing exercise, it isn't just, when you retire, it isn't just the dancing as exercise or going into a gym. You know, getting dressed up and doing ballroom. You should get out and take lessons if you don't know how. I mean, I was raised with it. I was born dancing. She was born dancing. But it's not just the dancing and the exercise. I mean, yes, the exercise is what keeps you young, but it's the getting dressed up and the ballroom gowns and the camaraderie and the socializing. That's all part of it. And square dancing is another good one. So and if you don't stay active in that kind of a physical fun activity, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to lose your bones. And I put my mother on a very, very special program. I was constantly having to rescue her 1 foot out of the grave. The first thing, of course, is that I had her on my OKRA diet for life system. And you look that up, OKRA for life or OKRA diet. I have that already on the internet. But in addition to that, in 2014, after everything I'd gone through to get her health under control, because doctors she was always going to doctors behind my back and taking drugs behind my back and eating food that she was allergic to behind my back. So I was constantly having to pull her out of that. And this one time wasn't her fault. It was dandelion root tea that caused her to be poisoned. and it was just terrible what we went through. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I begged for help. She had diarrhea and was throwing up, and so I called a nurse for help. I didn't know what. She had been drinking the tea once a day for 3 or 4 days before she went into vomiting and diarrhea attacks. When I looked it up online, I found that it could be really toxic. And I did follow it up with the manufacturer and said they better put it on there that people who are elderly or if you're pregnant should not take it. You know, there are some herbs that can be very toxic. But Google gave me the best advice. It took 2 hours, but I followed their instructions. And it said to make warm water in the microwave and have her stay seated up, and important not to lay down, and keep her brain active, and sip and wet the mouth slowly. That worked to get 3 cups into her without throwing it up. And then I let her rest for an hour, and then I had her sip chicken broth to get the salt back into her, because she would be, you know, you lose your salt when you have diarrhea and dehydration. And that took another few hours, and then I let her sleep. And the next day it was chicken soup all day until she got back to normal, which took about 3 or 4 days. And I don't like tea, so thank God I didn't try it. It would have killed me, because I am chemically hypersensitive. One sip of anything and down I go. And she had extreme digestive difficulties, and it was so difficult. A doctor had I'm going to tell you a little story. She went to the doctor complaining that she had chronic pain, and so he gave her ulcer pills. Well, he didn't know whether or not she had an ulcer, but he gave her ulcer pills. And the truth is that the ulcer pills made full digestion of nutrients from food inefficient, so the calcium was not being replenished into her bones. And with Paget disease and osteoporosis, that's not a joke. She became completely crippled. So then she went to the doctor saying she was in so much pain. He gave her arthritis pills. And then when she broke down from her boyfriend, complaining she was feeling dizzy and weak, he gave her pills for high blood pressure. Now this was 2005, and I had a premonition she was in trouble, so I moved to Sudbury to try to be able to keep watch on her, because she's been doing this all my life, doing stuff, taking pills, eating junk, and me having to rescue her. And at that time I was living a 4-hour drive from her. So anyway, luckily I found a doctor. I took her to the hospital, and she took a brain seizure right in my arms, but by then I had moved in, and I took her to the hospital with an ambulance. And the doctor on duty, Dr. Boudra, thank God, he recognized me. We've had a relationship going back quite a few years. And he knew about the science that I had used to reverse my brain damage. So he very quickly realized that it was all the pills that she was on, which I knew to bring with me. And so we had to detox her. He put her on an IV drip and drained all that junk out of her. But it darn near crippled her, it killed her, you know? It's so stupid. And she began to cripple a couple of years later again. And now this calcium deficiency that she had, and of course she was back on the ulcer pill. So she was losing all the calcium that she was eating, because the pill didn't allow her to have digestion. So anyway, from there I just scolded her like a bad child, and I said, from now on I'm going to watch you night and day, and you're not going to eat outside, and I want to know what you're eating, and I want to know what you're taking, and don't you be lying to me and going behind my back. So I put her on a program, and it was designed strictly for Paget disease and osteoporosis. Of course, the other thing is that I never got any help from Health Canada. You should know FDA was wonderful. Anytime I contact the National Centers for Disease Control, NIH Department of Chemical Hazards, the only agency in Canada that was ever helpful to me was the Ministry of Forestry, and Fisheries and the Environmental Protection Agency, but other than that, Health Canada should be in jail. They're just a bunch of murderers. And there was a very safe for her Paget disease. It was a hormone from salmon fish, and they banned it. Apparently 2% got cancer. Well, my God, 50%, listen, 50% of the people are getting cancer now by just stepping outside the door. You don't be banning something that comes from fish just because, oh, anyway, I'm not even going to go there. Give me a break already. Hate that place. They're all just a bunch of murders. Anyway, get on track. Now, I don't suggest everyone do everything that my mother did, but in my opinion, witnessing her success and her amazing recovery, I mean, she had 100% memory at 98, despite all the brain seizures from the drugs the doctors gave her because of my OKRA diet system. But more importantly, it was battling this bone disease. And I think 200 years from now, probably 80% of the human population will have the same disease because it's triggered by toxic chemicals. And we are in a toxic world, and our food is so full of poison and pesticides and stuff. So anyway, I'm doing it for you seniors out there, even 200 years from now. But we were in a desperate situation when they banned her Paget disease medication. So through the FDA, I was able to get more research, and I hope that some of this will be beneficial to seniors. All calcium supplements have to be from a plant source base. There's some fat on it, and calcium from minerals. Look, you don't digest rocks, people. You're not a plant. So it's got to be a plant source. It should be either citrate or a plant source. Mine is from seaweed, which is called CalMag. And my mother, I had, because her disease is and like a bone, it's almost like a bone cancer. It was really necessary that I get calcium into her very quickly. So I put her on the liquid. And she didn't like milk. So I didn't want her on any milk that had lactose in it. So I put her on a soya milk that she happened to like, and it was lactose free. And or organic milk is okay too. But it's got to be lactose free. And I also had to have her follow the food combining techniques. Now, there is a Dr. Janet Von Brill who claims that food combining has no merit. Well, she's full of a hooey. I got news for you. Because with her digestion problems from the drugs and the brain seizures from the drugs from the doctor, plus the Paget disease and osteoporosis, which in her case was a genetic thing, there are some really simple ways on food combining. They're all on my site, if you can find my site. But 200 years from now, it might be difficult. I'll be long dead when you hear about this program. But you mustn't mix beans with wines. The tannins in wines prevents the iron from beans being absorbed. No spinach with dairy, because the oxalates in spinach, beets, collards, leeks, and parsley stop the calcium absorption. So you have to make sure that you have your dairy at least 2 hours separate from spinach. I just took her off spinach; it was too difficult. And then I put her on an all-in-one greens from the health food store. It's okay to have nuts and tofu, but a bad mix is nuts and seeds with whole grains. They contain phytates that block iron, so vegetarians should not put these in their greens or smoothies. Eat them 2 hours apart. Good is nuts and oatmeal. They mix okay. Diabetics and obesity can control blood sugar, so and helps to control. So stay away from potatoes and starchy foods, but make sure you have a high fiber. A whole grain multi-pasta instead of white pasta increases your fiber and reduces your sugar. She was hypoglycemic, so she had to have 6 small meals a day. It was also another genetic factor that she had inherited. And a handful of nuts added to fruit salad will slow down the absorption of carbohydrates. If you're hypoglycemic, it's very similar to being a diabetic. You have to watch your sugar intake because it becomes a yo-yo effect. You know, you take in the sugar and you spike, and then you crash. So you really have to balance. Better than good is extra virgin olive oil and tomatoes together. The lycopene that helps to prevent cancer, and its fat-soluble antioxidant in tomatoes can prevent tumor growth and reduce your risk of cancer and heart and cardiovascular disease. So a drizzled small amount of extra virgin olive oil on tomatoes will increase the absorption of this lycopene. I had her do that with the tomato sandwich, and organic breads is a must, preferably sprouted because they're more readily digestible. But if not, back in our day we had Rudolph, which is a company in Toronto, a German company in Toronto, and they have an oat bread, the 5-grain, and it's very high in oats, which is extremely good. Goods is a mix is avocado and green mix salads, organic. Vitamin K found in leafy greens is better absorbed with a healthy fat like avocado or extra virgin olive oil. So when I have her eat a small salad or make a smoothie with green salad, I always make sure you put in a dash of olive oil. A good combo is kombu and beans, and I'm not sure, we never went in for the kombu. It was too hard for us to find it. It's a type of kelp, and she didn't like it. But it helps to break down the compounds in beans that lead to intestinal gas. If you cook your beans adding a kombu, it'll degas the beans. It's good information to have. I couldn't get her to do that, but what I had her do was have yogurt with the beans, or chili and on pasta, and she was fine with that. Good is beans and bell peppers. To increase iron for vegetarians, the red pepper has 3 times the amount of vitamin C of a tomato or an apple. Squeeze lemon juice on kale and arugula, or add raw red bell peppers. Cooking loses the vitamin C, so you have to eat it raw, and if you've lost your teeth, then you put it in a smoothie. And the all-in-one, I had her on the all-in-one regularly. So I made sure that she was on plenty of dark greens, and because it was difficult for her to eat salad, what I had her do was, she liked broccoli, and broccoli is high in calcium, and cooking doesn't lose the calcium, and I had her do that. Calcium fluoride is necessary to rebuild your bones, and its highest level is found in seafood or strawberries. It was easy to get her to eat strawberries. She was a strawberry addict, and so I had her eat a lot of strawberries, and it was difficult to find it organic, so in the summer we would go to farms and get it where they didn't spray pesticides on it, or frozen organic would be fine, and she'd have that with yogurt. But I had to keep her on a completely pesticide-free program. And when we lost the calcitonin, the natural hormone on salmon, I put her on rainbow trout because she didn't like salmon. She wouldn't eat salmon. But rainbow trout is a freshwater salmon. And so I had her on a weekly diet. She would have shrimps once a week. She would have rainbow trout once a week, and if you don't like fish, I have had a problem with fish. It makes me stink like dead fish, so I would take krill oil instead. And the essential ingredient, of course, in her program was mainly organic, food combining techniques, making sure that when you separate your food groups as much as possible, and In other words, when you eat protein, but yogurt is the one thing that would balance with everything. When you eat fruit. When you eat vegetables, you eat vegetables. So I had her separate, and because of her iron deficiency, instead of taking iron pills, I had her on organic pumpkin seed butter on toast. I got that from Vitality Magazine. They helped me a lot. Vitality Magazine in Toronto. They were really wonderful when I was terrified that she would die when we lost her drug that controlled the pageant disease, the hormone, I mean. And they helped me as well as the Americans agencies and the FDA. And so in the morning, she was on the sprouted organic multigrain toast and organic pumpkin seed butter. And she would also have a fine oat porridge with dried cranberries, crushed almonds, and a little spoon of organic honey. And and added a teaspoon of wheat germ, organic, and the organic unsweetened soya milk, and a little dash of camelina oil, which is very expensive, but it's an omega 6, I believe, and liquid calcium citrate, along with a strong bone supplement, a veggie essential all-in-one plant-based daily foundation twice a day. She would take it with juice once at breakfast with her soya milk, and then once at noon with the a little bit of cranberry juice. Or and because she also had kidney disease and bladder dysfunction, I had her on supplements, of course, milk thistle and cranberry pills a couple of times a day for that. And yeah, she was on a lot of supplements because there was just so much wrong with her. But as I say, 200 years from now, this will be pretty normal. I think about 10% of the population in seniors right now are having the same difficulties. And they're having an awful lot of surgeries. And my mother didn't have to because of the program I put her on, okay? She would have been on the knee surgery and the hip surgery and all of the above. And I avoided all of that by making sure that she had a mattress that was proper, that allowed your body, the contour of your body, and like a Z bed is what I call it, but it's really from the rubber tree plant. It's 100% organic, and yes, it costs a couple of $1,000, but it's worth it. And she would have once a day when she got up in the morning, she would take she got her vitamin D and magnesium in her liquid calcium, and she was on calcium citrate from the health food store. And then she would have 1 square organic Switzerland chocolate. Now, if I ate the 1 square of chocolate, I would be on a binge, so I can't do that. Wish I could, but anyway, she did pretty good. Now, for noon, there were a number of things that I did. She also didn't like to eat the same thing twice, and in 2 days in a row kind of thing, so I had to balance it. But she would have fruit and 0-fat organic plain yogurt with 2 diced okra raw every day, with extra strawberries for the calcium and blueberries for the antioxidants. And it would be frozen because it was the only way I could get organic. By the time we get fruit shipped up here, it's lost most of its benefit. Now, the one interesting thing that I have to point out is that a dear lady in Toronto asked me about okra, that she couldn't find it organic. Well, the interesting thing about okra is it's actually a member of the cactus family, and it is not really a vegetable, it's a herb. and it's extremely, it'll grow anywhere. You know, it's easy to grow. So it doesn't require a lot of pesticides. And if they use a pesticide on it, it's not an oil-based pesticide. It's a powder, and it does wash off. So you're really quite safe with okra. There are a number of items that are what we call the green list. You can look that up on Google, and they will tell you that items that are sturdy and hardy enough that they don't require a lot of pesticides, and they're on what I call the green list. Everything else should be organic. And she would have half a banana, and with one piece of sprouted organic grain bread, a strong bone supplement, again the veggie all-in-one, and a liquid calcium citrate. That's what she would take at lunch. And at supper time, twice a day, twice a week, she would have on Friday rainbow trout, and possibly again the next day, and once a week she would have shrimp, shrimp is really important. It has nutrients in it that will increase your calcium. I guess that's why the Mediterraneans are so healthy. They eat a lot of the seafood. And then on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on which day, she would have organic grain-fed chicken thighs, which would be cooked in distilled water, and you cook off the fat. And she would eat that with a small sweet potato for the vitamin A. But she also took a supplement of halibut for vitamin A. But if you have eaten fish and seafood or sweet potatoes in large amounts, vitamin A is not a water-based vitamin. It stays in your body, so you can get a vitamin A poisoning. So you have to be careful. If you're, so when you're eating sources of vitamin A like fish and seafood, and half a sweet potato won't do it, but if you're eating a whole, very large sweet potato, you should not take the vitamin A supplement. And there's only two kinds of A supplement that I consider safe. One is from beta-carotene, a natural-based source, and the other is the halibut. Cod is not a good idea. It's a sucker fish, and it's very toxic. So I don't recommend it. She would have, on Thursday, grain-fed veal. Veal is, she also had gout. She couldn't have beef. Nobody should be eating beef anyway. And although I don't approve particularly of beef of any kind, even veal, she loved it so much, so I wasn't going to cut her off it. And but it had to be organic. And she would eat that with whole grain pasta. On another day, she would have Amy's Organic Veggie Burger that has no canola oil in it. That's completely vegetarian, but it's high in vegetarian protein. I was just never good at the vegetarian style of cooking to get enough of the protein necessary. So we stay on veggie burgers, but not Yves, nothing with canola oil. And I cut her off the white potato completely because she needed the nutrients from the sweet potato. And she would have broccoli, mixed vegetables, carrots, broccoli, and cauliflower with every meal, plus a liquid supplement, B50. Now I'm on the B100s, but I take it in a pill form, but because she had digestion absorption difficulties by now, the liquid B50 would go straight into your bloodstream so fast that it wasn't necessary to take 100. And my rule is that you need to know the source of the supplement that you're taking. I don't approve of taking a B vitamin with fruit. Fruit doesn't have B vitamins in it. B vitamins come from protein and meat. So therefore it should be eaten with beans or meat, or eat it with the, always take your supplement with the source. Calcium supplement, you have to take it either with your milk or your yogurt or your kefir, or because that's the source of calcium, the main source of calcium, or eat with broccoli. Always take a supplement with its natural source. And Google has that information. It's, you know, I don't have to keep repeating everything, I hope. And I never start the day with protein, although I know some people start their day with eggs. I end my day with eggs because it puts me to sleep. So you kind of have to figure out what's good for you. She was having so many, she was having enough protein at supper. She didn't need to be having eggs in the morning, but she did like it once a week, and so she'd have a poached egg on sprouted grain toast. And she maintained a nice healthy weight, but she didn't eat large meals, you understand. These are small meals, small portions. Like if she would buy a rainbow trout, she would have half one day and half the next. If she would buy a veal, she might have half one day and half the next. Small portions. Or what I would have her do is just stick the other half in the freezer and have it later on. But when you have your protein, absolutely I am opposed to barbecuing on charcoal and gas fumes of any kind ever. That is so dumb. Yeah, and they say the Indians did it. Well, I got news for you. I did some research on Native Indians and the Hurons, and you know what? They died an early death because of smoke inhalation and the toxic fumes from the smoke, cooking everything on smoke fires like barbecuing. And yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. They had extremely high amounts of smoke inhalation. They were cooking indoors and breathing in all that stuff, and it killed them. Then it was called consumption, but it's really lung cancer. So it's not a good thing. At 10 o'clock, because of her hyperglycemia, she would have a small stack, a half an orange, with zero fat organic yogurt. At 11 p.m., she would have no salt, zero fat organic chicken broth. And she would take that with her prescription medications. And she was on prescription medications. I worked with Dr. Budra and made sure that when her family doctor gave her something, we'd go over the checklist, and the pharmacist would also help me, and he'd go, uh-oh, he's got this ulcer pill again, or uh-oh, he's got this brain pill again that caused the brain seizure, or, you know. She wouldn't have made it. She was a terrible patient. She was constantly behind my back going to the doctor and getting new prescriptions. But I got both the head of staff at the Sudbury Hospital, Dr. Budra, to help me, and we kept it on file, and the same with the pharmacist at Walmart. They were wonderful. They would phone me the minute they'd see that the prescription came through for something they knew darn well that was going to make her sick or kill her. They would call me, because doctors were idiots. They were the bone of my life. Just made my life a hell. Along with everything else, there was a hell. Anyway, now she loved rhubarb and strawberry pie. And there was a product from Nova Scotia that would be shipped in that I would buy her from Walmart that had no canola oil in it. And she would just have a small piece. My mother, the one thing about my mother is that she was very disciplined. She never pig ate. She never ate big meals. She was very programmed for small meals. And it certainly helped because of her digestion problems. It was really necessary that her meals be small. So at 11 o'clock, it would help her sleep. And so she would have rhubarb and strawberry pie. Just a small piece. And it was made with no canola. It did have a bit of lard in it. That's the old-fashioned way, and there was nothing wrong with that. Now, when she got food poisoning on March 23rd, I stopped her from having all frozen yogurts. She liked frozen yogurt, but it had polysorbate 80 in it, and I nearly died on it, and I took her off of it. Just because it didn't kill her, I felt that she had to stop eating it. So I just had to switch her to plain yogurt and keep her off these ice creams and stuff. There was nothing, I couldn't find one that was healthy. Right now there happens to be a couple that don't have polysorbate in them, but at this time I couldn't find any. Now, another problem was that her freezer broke down, and she didn't pay any attention. That's how she got food, another bout of food poisoning, and she didn't tell me about it. She just wasn't paying any attention, and so she wound up with food poisoning. Like I say, she was a bad patient. But the additive wasn't even listed on the ingredient. It was a Canadian product that caused us to get poisoned. But anyway, the following were the supplements that I also added to her diet 5 years ago. At noon or at bedtime, she would have a small shot of organic black cherry juice for her gout and arthritis. She had liquid shellfish-free glucosamine for joint maintenance. She was on milk thistle and red Swiss chard. I would cook up a whole big batch of the red Swiss chard, and then she would have like a tablespoon of red Swiss chard every day with a meal. And they detox the liver, the gallbladder, and all of your organs and kidneys. And she would have vitamin E and krill oil with supper, along with vitamin D with the liquid calcium. But like I say, she wasn't having any spinach. Her supper meal had nothing in it that was not complementary to calcium. Like you can have chicken and a calcium. It's just spinach that you got to avoid, or kale and beets. And once a day she would have her egg instead of porridge, and always with the sprouted whole grain bread. Frying foods were very limited on my program. If it is done with a very, very small amount of coconut oil or olive oil. And it's really important to know that I got rid of all aluminum pots, only on stainless steel, glass, or there is, and not Teflon. I threw out the Teflon. There is a new product. It's kind of a ceramic non-stick product. It doesn't bleed anything into the food, and it's called Rock, and that's the brand name, Rock. But anyway, it is hard like a rock, and it's a form of ceramic, and it's a newer product, and I'm sure 200 years from now you'll have that around, and nobody will be using Teflon. Yuck. And she would have a little sprinkling of camelina oil on the sweet potato, and I put it on salad and on vegetables. She was not allowed butter or margarine, and sometimes there is an organic avocado mayonnaise. She would put that on toast, or she put that on her veggies. My mother was French, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but she had to have a gravy or a sauce on everything, so it was really hard for me to find a way to do that without it being toxic. So I made sure that I would find a tomato sauce that had no canola oil and no toxic chemical additives, that would be organic, and you know, for people, I don't know, I wasn't crazy about having all these sauces all over my food. I like my food separate. In fact, there's a funny story about that. When I was a child, I refused to eat everything on the same plate. I would eat my veggies, go to the kitchen, wash out my plate, and come back. Or I started with separate plate little dishes, but my dad got mad at that. So I finally I switched to washing out my dish, and I had to eat everything separately. I didn't like everything. I didn't like my food touching, and I liked it separately. And I don't know why that was. But truthfully, there was nothing wrong with eating it separately. It was almost like I was naturally following a food combining and keeping my food groups separately. Like I know that in some cuisines, like in Britain, they put fruit with meat. I think that's really bad. Like, that's really bad. Anyway, there's nothing left of the fruit when you cook it. It's so stupid. You should eat all your fruit, should be fresh, uncooked. So for cooking, it would be coconut oil or olive oil. We don't cook with camelina oil because it's very expensive. and it's an omega-6 oil, so it's really isn't preferable. You're better with olive oil or coconut oil. And sometimes I would take olive oil, and I would put a dash of garlic, Mrs. Dash minced, dillweed and cayenne pepper, put it in the fridge, let it gel, and spread that on her toast. Tomatoes were in her diet every day. She was allergic to tomatoes, by the way. She'd get this huge pimple on her nose, and she absolutely loved them. But it took me until she was almost, I don't know, what, she was 90 when I discovered that the little baby grape tomatoes didn't have the same acid in them that the larger tomatoes do, and she didn't have this reaction. But as a child, we used to break out laughing. She'd have this big pimple on her nose, and she reminded me of Pinocchio, and I'd say to her, "You've been eating tomatoes." She'd go, "No, no, I didn't." And I said, "Mother, you've got a great big pimple on your nose." "Yes, you were." It's quite funny. Oh, she was funny. But anyway, she could eat any tomato cooked. So whatever was in it that caused the acid, it would cook off. But she could eat the little grape tomatoes. So when she was having, and tomatoes could be either a fruit or a veg. So for one of her little snacks, she would have small grape-sized tomatoes or organic grapes. And she would eat a few every day. That was her favorite munchie. Mine is dates and dry roasted peanuts. That's my munchie. But mine is only late at night. I can't eat in the daytime at all. I'm too nauseated. And for years I couldn't figure out how come I couldn't eat peanuts without getting violently ill. Well, it's not a nut, it's a protein. So in other words, it's eating a raw bean. There's no way my digestion could handle a raw bean. But cooked, of course, I don't have a problem. And I personally chew a lot of nuts, Brazil nuts, walnuts, no almonds unless sliced, because I crack too many teeth on them. No pecans, because I had a terrible episode in Wasaga Beach back in 2005. I wound up with a cupboard full of maggots from pecans, and that did it for me. Freaked me out so bad I haven't been able to eat a pecan since. I suppose if I'd been brave, I could have cooked the maggots for their protein, because I know there are a number of natives in South America do that, but I'm just not into that. Although one time, truthfully, I did eat chocolate-coated ants at a Japanese New Year's party in Toronto, and some days later I woke up in New York City. Ha! That's quite the story. We won't go there. Okay, okra raw, never cooked, for the record. This was my discovery in 1995 through a vision. And it's not listed anywhere for brain and memory loss. And I keep trying to get that message out, because it's so important. I was completely retarded. I was actually a genius in a career. You look me up online, I'm sure there'll be some record of me still around 200 years from now. But I lost my memory and my brain through being poisoned by canola oil. And it's called Parkinsonism disease. And I spent decades trying to make a sentence, and I couldn't write beyond the level of, and speak beyond the level of a 5-year-old child. And now I can read biochemistry with no problem, okay? And I think you can hear me. You know that I don't talk like a 5-year-old child. And if I'd have met a different doctor, perhaps I would have been diagnosed with autism, because when I'm in an attack, I lose speech, and I can't walk, and the brain signal doesn't go to my legs, and I'm dysfunctional, and I'm crippled, and excruciating pain. Okra reverses the attack. Yes, okra. Now I also, decaf coffee will help to reverse the attack, and so will chocolate. But at one point I was on 40 cups of coffee a day. It's a wonder I didn't get cirrhosis of the liver from so much coffee. So it's not really a good thing. It was just God's little accident that I was just too sick to cook it. I had a vision to get on okra. I was dying, and it brought me, it rejuvenated my brain, and I was able to relearn. It still took me another 22 years to be able to write so that I could be understood. My writing was sort of like little rhymes and verses, and kind of strange. And some people liked it, but I could never get published. I was just never famous enough to get published. But all the other disease research that was helpful came from Americans and one person in England. What little I got from Canadian agencies, well, I didn't get any other than Vitality magazine. There are a number of health magazines that I begged for help from, but they just didn't give me any information that was helpful. But Vitality was the only one. They even published my story when my mother was going to die, because her calcitonin for the Paget disease was banned by Health Canada, and they published it, and I got a lot of help and information on, you know, a way to get calcium into her, such as the citrate and seaweed, and different things like that. And it also had an ad for the Veg Essentials All-in-One. Wow, that saved my butt, and that saved my mother's butt, because when I take major attacks, I starve. I can't eat at all, and it's kept me alive. And I put Dan on it only because he had cancer, bowel cancer, and that was in 1994. Today is 2018, and he's still doing well, but he's on an organic diet, same as me. So she takes 1 spoon of the Veg Essential. I tested it first because I'm so chemically hypersensitive. You know, like I'm now on a special liquid collagen, and it's actually working. It's reducing the inflammation. I've been suffering with inflammation and swellings all through my lymph system, and excruciating pain, and I'm crippled all the time. It's because I have a tumor that did nerve damage, and I was set back 30 years. And it's not one that can be operated on, and it did nerve damage. But anyway, the Veg All-in-One didn't do me any harm at all. So I used myself as a guinea pig, because I'm so sensitive. If there's anything toxic in it, boy, I'm going to go down quicker than spit. And I worked too hard to get her well. I didn't want her trying stuff. I'm on the plain one. I don't like any. There was a it had a sweetener in it. It's agave. It's a natural source. It's not toxic or anything. But Mom had a big sweet tooth, so she went on the one with the that was sweeter. Dan the same. Me, I like it plain. And in an emergency and shock, I for allergy alert, the important thing is that I learned how to deal with my attacks, and I did the same with my mother. If she took an allergic attack, she wouldn't go down as bad as me, but I would just have her walk the room and pace. And if she ate something that made her feel dizzy and weak, you got to keep moving. Don't lay down. And 1 cup of decaf coffee, and it triggers adrenaline. Like I say, it's not something that you should do all the time. The idea is to prevent the attack, if possible. But if I'm poisoned, or if she was poisoned, it takes months to reverse. The OKRA detox system is the only way to do it, and that means several OKRA every day. Chocolate would also trigger adrenaline, but the caffeine would keep me. It didn't bother my mother, but I have chronic insomnia, so if I eat the chocolate, I don't sleep for 2 days, and then I wind up, I'm sleeping at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sleeping all day, and my day is shot, and I can't do anything, and then I'm up all night. I'm all ass backwards, and but anyway, a lot of the chocolate, the reason it's causing problems is there's all kinds of I can't say these chemicals. I can't even say it. Tanzeranzine, something or other. It's really toxic. They've got all these toxic chemicals, and in Canada, if it's made in Canada, all the ingredients aren't going to be on it. So it's just not safe. I can now get a cheap chocolate from the United States at any grocery store, and it doesn't, and it's not even organic, but there's nothing toxic in it, so I'm okay with that. but she also had, she would retain water. So I had to find a way with her kidney disease to keep the swelling down. So we put her on 99% pure aloe vera a couple of times a day. But all I know is it worked. For 11 years, despite all that was wrong with her, she could dance 5 times a week until clindamycin killed her. So seniors out there, I know that's a lot. I have it all typed up, but 200 years from now, that information, all those websites will be gone. I have them all on Google, but I don't know how to make that public. Right now, all my Google Docs are private unless I share it with you, and I don't know how to make it public. And I'm just not famous enough for me to be able to contact Google to tell them that everything that I have in Docs, I would like them to make it available to share with the world. I don't know how to do that. I can't reach them. I'm just not somebody that's important enough. But instead of meat, I also put her on buffalo meat, by the way. I forgot about that. It comes like a hamburger, and I would cook up the hamburger and put it in tomato sauce and put that on the pasta. And the omega-3 that she was on was strictly from anchovy fish, no sucker fish. And of course, the eggs and chicken, everything was organic. Another is organic frozen blueberries, blackberries, and cherries. Is really healthy. An anti-inflammatory is crushed almonds. And apple cider vinegar, a little splash of apple cider vinegar on all meals is really important. It's an antioxidant, and it aids in digestion, and it helps to clean your blood. Green algae is also really good, and it'll help you with sleeping if you have a problem. But that doesn't work for me. The only thing is an egg, so eat an egg at night. And there is a bone broth with collagen that you can do for a leaky gut repair. Sprouted oats is really helpful for digestion. There is a digestive enzymes that you can take, but my mother was able to take it, but I couldn't. It bothered my stomach. I also put her on how to build your bones. Was a there is a supplement that at the moment, what did I do with it? Oh God, what did I do with it? Oh, it's here somewhere. It starts with C. Come on, what'd you do with it, Trudy? Here it is. Creatine, C-R-E-A-T-I-N-E. It's a protein building block that really benefited her because she started to have muscle wasting disease from the prescription drugs. And I was able to, that helped. That really helped. It made a difference. But she would stay active. My mother liked to get dressed up, and she would literally be in the hospital one day and want to go dancing the next. That was the one thing about my mother. Although she was my bad patient, doing stuff behind my back all the time, that part made my life much easier, because it was easy to get her out of bed and get her to do things, and keep moving around. And let me tell you, she passed her driver's test in '97 with flying colors, people. So did something right. And she did have the brain seizures and had lost her memory and everything. Yeah, it took 6 months, but I got it completely reversed. And glutamine-rich foods, seafood, fish, and sardines. I had her on that. See, that's the kind of research I did with the help of Google. Thank you, Google. And thank you, everybody that helped me, and Vitality Magazine, and Dr. Jaffe, NIOSH Department. NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse. There are so many, and the FDA people, you were also great. Without you, she would have died much sooner. And I kept her alive another 11 years. And she would still be alive if it hadn't been for her going behind my back and the doctor putting her on clindamycin that killed her. Anyway, love you, Mom. And in her honor, I share this with the world, and I hope it helps somebody. I wish there was a way for me to get it online so it would be there permanently forever, but I don't know how to do that. But you can live to 110 and dance 5 times a week. She would have, let me tell you, she would have, if it hadn't been for clindamycin. Okay, I hope this helps somebody, and wherever you are, Mom, God bless.